Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this exclusive workshop with Global Citizen Year and Dr. Deepak Chopra. My name is Aissatou, and I am a Senegal 2013 alum. And before we formally get started, I would love to see how many of our alumni are out here and present today. So if you are an alum, please send out a heart emoji reaction so that we can see how many of us there are. Awesome, awesome. It makes me so happy just to see how big the community has gotten. And I also just want to give a special shout out to our latest alumni inductees, the fall class of 2021. So if that is you, special shout out to you. Hope you've been celebrating. And I also want to welcome our newest Global Citizen Year students who are here as part of the 2022 spring semester. So if that's you, send out a ta-da or a celebration emoji so we can celebrate you and welcome and congratulate you on starting your journey. Awesome to see you all here. So I know that everyone is super excited for today's workshop, and I also want to invite you all and remind you that we'll be having a global gathering, which is our first alumni event, our first global alumni event, a really big deal that's happening on January 28th and January 29th. So if you know you're going to be there, if you're excited to reconnect, to reminisce, and to also meet a lot of new faces, send out a thumbs up emoji so that we know who's all going to be there. Awesome, awesome. So if I see your thumbs up, I'm expecting you all to be there. And just a quick overview for today. At the first part of the session, we'll be listening to Dr. Chopra, and at the last half, we'll be doing the Q&A. So again, if you have any questions that you would like to send in, again, use the Slido link. And also as well, as we're going through the workshop, if anything is particularly resonating with you, if you see yourself nodding, snapping, going, clapping, send out an emoji reaction so that we can see it and so that we can see what is resonating collectively for us all today. So I'm super excited to be here. And again, my name is Aissatou Berry-Rose, and I'm a 2013 Global Citizen Year alum. So my Global Citizen Year, it was a really pivotal year for me because it led me to start asking a lot of big questions about my life, like what is my purpose? What am I doing here? What is this all about? And looking back, it was also the first time that I started to use stillness and being present as a way to ground myself into a new and unfamiliar environment. And these are skills that I still use every day to this day as someone who is living in Gambia and teaching online to creative spirits. And then I also host a podcast about self-growth. So for these reasons and a lot more, as someone who is deeply passionate about personal transformation and who also belongs to an organization, Global Citizen Year, who has transformed so many lives, including my own, I know that today's guest is particularly exciting, not just for me, but for all of our global community. So I want to introduce you to Dr. Deepak Chopra. He is a pioneer in the world of integrative medicine and personal transformation. He has written over 90 books, including one of my personal favorites, The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. And these books have been translated into more than 43 languages, including Romanian, Portuguese, Polish, Spanish, French, Tamil. If you speak any of these languages, give us a thumbs up so that we can see you out there. And Dr. Chopra's work extends beyond him through his work with the Chopra Foundation, a nonprofit that researches well-being and humanitarianism, as well as Chopra Global that holds retreats around healing and meditation all around the world. So he has really created a global community that is committed to showing up and doing the inner work that is so important for us right now. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to our guest for today, Dr. Deepak Chopra.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I want to thank you, but also particularly Abby, for asking me to join this conversation with all of you. And since I plan only to speak for the next 20 minutes and then do maybe a meditation at the end, if you want, and then leave enough time for for Q&A. Hopefully, we can get a good idea of uh, where I feel the future of leadership is going in the world. So I'd like to start with a very short story, which will tell you a little bit about my interest in leadership. The story goes back to when I was about maybe 8 years, no, actually closer to 10 years old in India. My little brother, who later became Dean of Harvard Medical School Education, was about 7. We were living in a small town in India called Jabalpur, and we read in the newspapers that Mr. Nehru, the first Prime Minister of independent India, or what was then being referred to as the Republic of India, named after Plato's Republic ideas, that Mr. Nehru was visiting our town, which was then a small town. Now it's a big town, to open a factory. It was the first time collaboration of the Indian government with Mercedes-Benz, and they were making, for the first time, India was manufacturing automobiles and trucks. And Mr. Nehru was coming to our town to cut the ribbon. So 3 weeks before his visit, there was only one conversation in our house, initiated by my mother. And the conversation was, what am I going to wear for the occasion? What color sari should I wear? And my father would tease her and say, there are going to be millions of people. He's not going to notice your sari. And she said, well, you wait and see. So on the day that Mr. Nehru's motorcade came by our house, we were all up very early, 4 o'clock in the morning, on the street, to see his motorcade pass by our street. By about 9 o'clock, 5 hours after we were on the street, there were millions of people on the street. And when I say millions, in India, it means millions, not thousands, not hundreds of thousands. It means millions. In fact, it means tens of millions. So people hanging on treetops, people hanging by window ledges, people standing on top of each other's shoulders, people on buses, all waiting for Mr. Nehru's motorcade to come by our house. And at precisely 9 o'clock, it arrived, turned the corner, and there he was wearing his, now we call that famous Nehru jacket with a rose in his lapel, which was his signature, red rose. And he was standing in a Jeep with one motorcycle in the front, one motorcycle in the back. That was the motorcade for the Prime Minister of India, the founding Prime Minister of the Republic of India. And as the motorcade, as the Jeep came by us, I swear to God, I'm telling you the truth, because I remember this very clearly in what would be called today time lapse. And as it passed by us, Mr. Nehru turned, looked right in the eyes of my mother, took his rose off and threw it at her. And she stepped forward like a queen, picked up the rose, looked at my father and said, Daddy, what did I tell you? And now let's go home. So in that moment, I realized that my mother was the leader in our house, even though my father was also a leader. He had won many medals in World War II for the British Army, but she had a different vision of leadership. So we came home and she planted the rose in a vase and emptied out our library, which was small in the house, put the rose on a table in the middle of the house, in the middle of this library. And for the next 3 weeks, people came to our house to look at the rose. And when they came to our house, they would take off their shoes outside this room, because they felt it was a holy room, they would tiptoe into the room and look at the rose in silence. And, there were lines outside our house, and the talk of the town was Mr. Nehru threw a rose at Mrs. Chopra. After 3 weeks, the rose started to fade, as all things that are alive ultimately fade away. And my mother had a party, and she invited her best friends. And at the end of the evening, each of them got a rose petal, a faded rose petal. And you should have seen how they accepted it. It was like a family heirloom, more precious than a diamond. So, of course, I asked my mother what was so special about the roses, or that particular rose. And she said that rose was the symbolic representation of the dreams of India. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, 200 years of British colonialism and now freedom non-violently through Mahatma Gandhi and Mr. Nehru carrying out the dream for all of India. Aspirations, longings, visions, higher consciousness, and much more. I'm a product of that dream. I went to All India Institute of Medical Sciences, created by Mr. Nehru. Mr. Nehru also launched a 100-year plan in his mind, which he shared with all of us who were citizens of India, and created things like automobile factories, but much more. The Indian Institutes of Technology, which graduated brilliant students who now run more or less all the big Silicon Valley enterprises. That was the gift of Mr. Nehru's dream to India. So that sparked in me this whole thinking about what does it mean to have a soul? Do we even have a soul? What is the soul of a country? And my mother explained to me that the soul is our deepest longing for greatness. That's it. It is that aspect of us which unfolds our infinite potential. And just like people have dreams, so do societies, so do organizations, so do countries. So that was a long time ago. In my case now, almost 65 years ago. And that sparked my interest in what I later began to teach at Kellogg Business School and also Columbia Business School, and have lectured occasionally at Harvard on the same topic and many other institutions and for governments across the world, something called the soul of leadership. And I start by getting people to participate in that by doing what is called a soul profile. I ask them 7-8 questions about themselves. What are your peak experiences? Do you remember them? How did you feel? What is your life purpose? What's your contribution to the world, to the society? What are the best meanings you derive from relationship when you have a relationship? What do you give? What do you receive? What is your greatest longing for not only yourself, but your family and the world? Who are your heroes or heroines in history, mythology, religion? How do you value relationships? What are your core values, etc., etc.? And then based on the soul profile, we go through a series of exercises and training programs depending on how long the course could be. Usually it's about a day, sometimes it can be over a weekend, but it can go for a full week because there's a lot to discuss. So I'm going to share with you just a few slides right now to give you a gist of what is taught at this course, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. So let's see what the next slide is. Frank is forwarding the slides to you. So the next slide is my acronym for the soul of leadership. Leaders basically it's the 7 letters of the word leader. L stands for look and listen deeply. Look and listen with your body, look and listen with your mind, look and listen with your emotions, but ultimately look and listen through the stillness of your being and incubate there. Allow a vision to emerge. And today, people who talk about emergence in social science are talking about a phenomenon called emergence, which comes from deep listening, from deep caring, but also from maximum diversity of participants, not only ethnic and gender and racial and national diversity, but also diversity of talent, academics, scientists, technologists, humanitarians, film producers, movie makers, people in the education field, but also poets and songwriters and musicians and storytellers. So when you have maximum diversity, you have shared vision with a leadership that is distributed. And when you complement each other's strengths according to the soul profile that I discussed, then something emerges that never existed before. And that's a kind of a group creativity that I had not witnessed in individuals. But as groups, that creativity was extraordinary. It gave rise to a new vision. It gives rise to new context, new meanings, new stories. It's literally a death and a resurrection, death of an old paradigm and the emergence of a new paradigm. And that's the vision that everybody creates the community with. In the old days, the communities were small. They were, an organization or a corporation. But as I started to look at this, I said, why stop at leadership in an organization or in a political party or in a business or even in a family? Why not go all the way globally? And that's why I'm so honored to talk to you, because you talk about global citizen. And that's been my dream, to reach 1 billion people with a new vision for a more peaceful, just, sustainable, healthier, and joyful world through both personal and social transformation. I believe in Mahatma Gandhi's insight that you can only be the change you want to see in the world. And if enough people change, then the world will transform. So that's my mission right now, a global leadership ecosystem, or what we in Sanskrit call a Sangha. I look forward to working with you in carrying this vision. But I want to go a little bit beyond, because right now, the science that we are looking at is suggesting something much bigger than global citizen. And I'd like to propose universal citizen, or citizen of the cosmos, because it is in our consciousness that the idea of the cosmos is born. It is in our consciousness that we experience the Milky Way galaxy. And now we are told 2 trillion more galaxies, 700 sextillion stars, and uncountable trillions of planets. Right now we have a telescope in space called the James Webb Telescope, which is the size of a tennis court. And many scientists, cosmologists that I speak to, including Nobel laureates, are suggesting that there might be 60 billion habitable planets in just the Milky Way galaxy. And they estimate that by looking at what is called the Goldilocks zone. If a planet is too close to its sun, it's too hot for life as we know it. If it's too far away, it's too cold for life as we know it. But if it's within a certain range called the Goldilocks zone, life is not only possible, it's likely. And our science is supporting that. And I don't know if it's going to happen in my lifetime, but we're certainly going to navigate the seas of space, both outer and inner, in the next few generations. So I'd like our global citizens to graduate to cosmic citizens and visionaries and citizens of the cosmos. The second letter, E, talks about emotional bonding, which requires emotional intelligence, requires empathy, compassion, joy, equanimity, and understanding of other people's emotions, which is called empathy, compassion, the desire to alleviate suffering, and then followed by love in action, because love without action is meaningless, and action without love is irrelevant. But when they come together, love and action, through an emotional bond, where we understand our emotions, when we understand the emotions of the other, and when we have the ability to actually communicate in a way that is inspiring for all of us, so we can create a dream collectively, and we realize that there are no enemies. The enemies is just the expression of our collective shadow. The enemies ourself in a different uniform or a different skin color. More on that, because I can spend a whole day just on emotional bonding. A stands for awareness. Right now, as we look at the world leadership, is based on cronyism, corruption frequently, influence peddling, power mongering, and basically it's all about the ego identity, which gives rise to what we call the fight-flight response, and also the reactive or ego response. But beyond this ego response, there are other responses that we have the capacity to harness as humans. The restful awareness response, which was referred to earlier as the mindfulness experience or meditation experience. But beyond the restful awareness response, there's the intuitive response, to access a form of intelligence that is contextual, that is relational, that doesn't have a win-lose orientation, that actually eavesdrops on the zeitgeist and the collective longing. And beyond the intuitive response is the creative response, which is the death of an old story and the birth of a new story, new context, new meanings, new relationships. And beyond that is the visionary response, which is more archetypal, that Joseph Campbell talked about, not to the extent I wish he had, but the archetypal response is encoded in all the great mythologies and religions of the world, including the Bible, the Old Testament, the prophets of the Old Testament, the Upanishads, the sages of the Upanishads, the Zen masters of the Far East, and the great luminaries, starting with Plato and Socrates and the Republic and more. We have the ability to access visionary, archetypal experience that takes us above the superordinary into the extraordinary, the visionary response. And beyond that, we have something called the sacred response, where you actually don't have to do anything. Your presence transforms the world. And we've had examples of that throughout history, luminaries, but also in recent times with Martin Luther King Jr., Nelson Mandela, in my view, President Obama, and many others like Nehru and Gandhi and many more. So D here stands to dare to dream, and then do it. I suggest SMART goals. Stretch more than you can reach, make everything measurable, make sure your team agrees with you, make sure you keep a record of everything, and set time limits. When you plan that way, everything happens very spontaneously and effortlessly and joyfully. E here stands for empowerment, self-empowerment, where you feel beneath no one, not superior to anyone either, where you are fearless because you go beyond your ego identity, and where you also learn to empower your colleagues. Empowerment of just one person is dangerous because it leads again to the ego dramas that leaders participate in globally right now, in my opinion. R here stands for responsibility, which is very important now. I'm talking about health in general, but health includes physical well-being, emotional well-being, spiritual well-being, financial well-being, community well-being, and much, much more. And when we harness well-being and cultivate a joyful, energetic body, loving, compassionate heart, clear, reflective mind, and lightness of being, that leads to the seventh letter here, synchronicity. It's an interesting word because as I interviewed leaders throughout my career, they all said something very interesting in different words. Some said I was lucky. Some said I happened to be in the right place at the right time. Some said there were many meaningful coincidences. Some who were religious said I experienced grace of God, and others said the Divine Mother took care of me. But they were all talking about good luck in one way or another. And I believe good luck is opportunity meeting preparedness through these letters that I've identified here as the acronym Soul of Leadership. So I have a few more slides to show, which are research slides, but maybe I'll just skip them and we'll move on to the next phase, because what I'm sharing with you is a very small component of a long training that I have been doing for 30 years now. Next slide, please. So one thing, well-being and wellness are not the same. Wellness is what you get when you do your biomarkers, which is very important when you go to a doctor. But well-being is a state of consciousness, a state of awareness, which ultimately includes those things: joyful, energetic body, compassionate, loving heart, clear, reflective, creative mind, intuitive mind, and lightness of spirit, lightness of being. When you cultivate those personally and collectively, then many things happen. Next slide, please. And so these are some statistics that I have gathered over the year that have to do with how we look at well-being or have looked at it at the Gallup organization, where I happen to be on their scientific advisory board. Next, we won't spend too much time other than to say that the global state of well-being is very, very desperate right now. And you can tell the future of a country by just looking in their well-being in those buckets that I mentioned: physical well-being, emotional well-being, spiritual well-being, social well-being, community well-being, financial well-being, and corporate well-being. Before the government of Libya, last government of Libya fell down, I was informed by the State Department that the son of Gaddafi, the then leader of Libya, was coming to my course in Kellogg. And he did, escorted by the CIA. He introduced himself as a business person. And we had already shared the data with the government and others that Libya was going to fall based on their well-being. I was supposed to go to Libya after that, but within 3 weeks of the course, Gaddafi's son, who attended my course, was dead, as was Gaddafi. Just to give you an example, that well-being and leadership go together. If you cannot take care of your own well-being and the well-being of your colleagues and the well-being of your ecosystem, that's going to affect everything in the future, including the economics of a country and the state of war or terrorism or anything else. And right now, as I see the global landscape, I feel there's a desperate need for citizens of the globe to take this responsibility and not leave it up to governments and national leaders or organizations or even to nonprofits like the UN, etc. We need a collective global ecosystem that harnesses our collective vision, complements our strengths, and creates an ecosystem where we take refuge, as the Buddha said, refuge in the Dharma, higher purpose, refuge in the Dharma, higher purpose, refuge in the Buddha, which means higher consciousness, and refuge in the Sangha, which means the big community that we can create both online and offline, as you are all doing. Next slide, please. So I think I will not go into the financial aspects of the huge cost that disruption of well-being is having in the world, both economically and in the number of sick days and absenteeism and alcoholism and drug addiction that have become part of our ecosystem, even in leadership positions. Next. So in the last few years, I've been not only gathering data, but also looking at how we can improve well-being in the workplace. And this is only one aspect of the total well-being vision. Next slide, please. Okay, I think I will not go into further details because the data is overwhelming that we need a global citizen leadership across the world that focuses not only on the soul of leadership and the deepest longings of the world. The time has come. Extreme nationalism is leading to polarization. Nobody can agree with each other. We have left-wing people with right-wing lifestyles, right-wing people who happen to be cunning hypocrites in that they want to support everyone, but yes, they look only after their own welfare. The fact that the global world economy is controlled by less than 1% of people in the world. These are major issues that we need to address, but we cannot do that by participating in the polarization. We don't need to fight the darkness. We need to bring in the light. And I'll stop there because this is a lengthy presentation, but I hope I've given you enough food for thought and enough to perhaps collectively participate in a grander vision as the future unfolds. So I'll stop here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chopra. I know that you really did leave us with a lot. I really like the acronym for leaders. I'm really going to be digging into that for myself as I explore the soul of leadership. And I also appreciate how you invited us to think bigger than global, cosmic universe. I really appreciate that. And it helps me even think, if we are the earth, what is the soul of the earth? So thank you so much for your words. And I would love to bring now the leader, the CEO and founder of Global Citizen Year, Abby Fallett, to the stage.
Thank you, Isatu, Dr. Chopra. That was extraordinary. Thank you. I felt like I wanted a double click on each component of what you were saying, and I am hopeful on behalf of this group that this may be the first of many opportunities we have to work with you and to learn from you. I think everything you're describing is why we do what we do at Global Citizen Year. It's a new vision for leadership that starts from the inside out, that defines leadership as a practice and not a position or an arrival point or a salary or a title. A lifelong practice that begins as soon as you recognize you're awake to your own agency, your own ability to impact the environment and the humans around you. And it was extraordinary watching you go through the acronym, because I flashed on the first time I saw you do that. I was in an auditorium with a couple thousand people, one person in the back thinking, this is what we're here for. This is the vision of Global Citizen Year, is to spark this form of leadership in young people at the formative moment, the most formative moment in their lives. And I had no idea that from that auditorium to then flash forward a couple of years, I happened to run into you in line for a restroom at a smaller event and introduce myself, which I was nervous to do, but that it would lead to the synchronicity, as you say, of the parts coming together, of people finding their people. And one of our big beliefs here at Global Citizen Year is that people become people through people. And that one of the things we need to practice consistently is finding our teachers, is knowing what our questions are, and being open to finding the people whose wisdom and insight wake something up in us, and whose gravitational pull us toward them. And in you, I feel that, and I speak on behalf of this group who feels similarly. So thank you Thank you for being here. We have a ton of questions from the audience, and I am so excited to introduce you to some of our students and alumni from around the world. And I'm going to start with Nina. If Nina can come and join us, and I'll let them ask their own questions.
Hello.
Once they appear. Terrific.
Hello.
Hi,
Hello.
nice to meet you.
So nice to meet you. I'm so honored.
And ask your question.
Hello. So I'm Nina. I'm from Austria, and I would love to ask you, as I'm 20, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self? Because you achieved so many things. You're such a big inspiration to me. But what would you say to yourself?
I think I would say to a 20-year-old, harness the ability to express your highest potential for greatness. We can do a little meditation at the end, which will give you a clue on how to do that. But don't underestimate the fact that to be human and to be self-aware is actually the awareness of the universe. You're a stardust being with self-awareness. And do not ever estimate that you have access to infinite possibilities. Whatever you imagine, you are capable of. That's it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. Arman, would love to invite you to the stage.
Thank you so much, Abby. Good morning, Deepak. Good morning, Abby. It's nice having you here. And I'm from Nagpur, and it's a pleasure to meet you. I've heard about you quite a bit, few times, and I really feel good about it. So I just have one question, and it is about the sense of collective purpose which people have in order to achieve something. The sense of collective purpose which
Yes.
people have to do something. So the sense of nationalism which seemed to divide the Europeans and at the same time united the Indians. So how can we sort of transcend the idea of collective purpose from the essence of nationalism to the communities and businesses across the world?
You know, although I like the idea of nationalism, I think it will soon be outmoded. Extreme nationalism is the reason why we have wars, why we have terrorism, why we have competition, why we can't come to a solution in anywhere, Afghanistan or Syria or Egypt or Libya or, now Kazakhstan. Nobody comes to any agreement because of their extreme nationalism. That's an identity that has probably outrun its usefulness. Krishnamurti, one of the greatest Indian philosophers of all time, said, one of the greatest philosophers of all time, not just Indian, he said, extreme nationalism is sophisticated tribalism. And today, in today's age, we need to go beyond our tribal identities because we have modern capacities like nuclear weapons, like biological warfare, like cyber hacking, to be tribal and have these capacities, a very dangerous combination. So I would say today, global citizen leadership is absolutely necessary. Don't think of yourself as from Nagpur, or I grew up in Jabalpur, quite close to you, where you are. So think of yourself as a citizen of the cosmos, and you'll see that your nation and your tribe will also benefit.
Totally agree to it. Because I've been part of a few communities which sort of transcend beyond the national identities and stuff. So I slightly realized it. And at the same time, I realized the need of introducing people to an identity, an identity of a global citizen. And this is what brought me here. So thank you so much.
Our different cultures act as the most rich diversity for a future vision for humanity. Each culture is rich on its own, and not just the Indian culture, but look at the American Indians in this country. Look at the people in Western Europe and their cultures, which go back to the days of Stonehenge and even to what we refer to as the Dark Ages. Look at Eastern Europe and see the cultures there. We have so much richness that if we came together, this would be a more peaceful, just, sustainable, healthier, and joyful world instead of what it is now.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Arman. I recently heard and can't stop thinking about this idea that we're all on the same team globally. We just haven't figured it out yet. But when we think about the challenges that we're facing that are existential, if the pandemic can't teach us this, if our climate crisis can't teach us that we are all on the same team, it's scary to think about what it would take. But I think I'm optimistic that we still have a moment, this planetary consciousness that you describe.
We're all, Abby, we're all on Spaceship Earth.
We certainly are.
We just have different windows, but it's one ship. And if it sinks, everybody sinks.
Yeah, yes. And we have a window to change the course.
Yes.
Zulfawu, would love you to come up and ask your question, please.
Thank you so much, Abby. First of all, I want to say I've been really excited since yesterday to be here and to listen to you. And my question is, what's an aspect of how you grew up that has led to your journey of mindfulness and gratitude? And what is your advice for young ones on how to balance gratitude and needing more?
Well, we've done a lot of scientific studies on gratitude particularly, and we have asked many times people to keep a gratitude journal at night to just write down the answer to the following question: what happened today that I could be grateful for? And just that simple exercise, the inflammatory markers go down. We had a study with heart failure patients where people who kept a gratitude journal did much better than those who just took the medication. And now we are incorporating mindfulness techniques in the corporate world as well. So this is an ongoing program which one can start with very simple reflective inquiry, self-inquiry, but also mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of emotional space, mental space, mindfulness of the ecosystem of relationship, and mindfulness of our collective vision. As I said, towards the end, we'll do a short meditation to basically get a glimpse of how that can be incorporated in our personal and collective ecosystems.
Thank you so much. That was really insightful.
Wonderful. One of the things, Dr. Chopra, that we talk about as well is that the things we practice every day matter more than the things we do once in a while. And that the global citizen year experience is very much about initiating practices and setting the bar appropriately, sometimes quite low, whether it's 1 minute of meditation each morning, but something that creates a pathway and a habit, something that you can't think yourself out of, that becomes a part of what you do. Would you speak just for a moment to a couple, I'm sure there are many, but of your most crucial daily practices?
My most, well, I'm 75 years of age and I'm in really good health. So I practice yoga every day. I do meditation twice a day. And I'm very careful about what I put in my body as in terms of food, maximum diversity of plant-based foods. And I practice something called deep breathing exercises, which are from the tradition of pranayama and yoga, where I can use my breath to either energize my body or to slow it down or to restore homeostasis or to go to sleep, etc. This is part of my life. After all, I've been doing this for many decades, and it gives me energy to be available to the world to serve, basically.
Yes, that form of taking care of ourselves is not selfish. I think it's the most selfless thing we can do. Emiliana, would love to hear from you if you can join us up here.
Hi, Yeah, so I'm Emiliana, I'm from Chile, and my question is, for you, what is the importance of youth in leadership roles to sustain global values?
For me, right now, there's only one vision. If we could reach 1 billion people who are interested in harnessing the power of their souls, we could actually hope for a more peaceful, just, sustainable, healthier, and joyful world. Those words are very carefully chosen. Peace, because there's so much conflict in the world. More peaceful, sustainable. We mentioned climate change, but we need biological sustainability, and the sustainability of the biosphere are one. The trees are your lungs, the rivers are your circulation, the earth is recycling as your body, and the air is your breath. So why do we even call it the environment? It's your body. If you put a rabbit in a vacuum, it dies. If you put a plant in a vacuum, it dies. You put them both together, they both thrive. So we now have to think differently. There's no environment. What we call the environment is our extended body. And we have a personal body and we have a universal body. And we need to fall in love with both.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emiliana. Danielle has a question.
Hi, first of all, thank you for everything. It has been very insightful. So my question was, well, I know you have said this in your podcast, but how can or why should our leaders live outside of the box?
Current leadership, honestly, in the world, I could name a handful of leaders who are amazing in the world. I'm a fan of Angela Merkel, whether you like her politics or not. A fan of the Prime Minister of New Zealand, the Prime Minister of Ireland. But then I stop. I can't identify any other people who are not interested in anything other than power mongering and influence peddling and cronyism and egomania and competition. So, I want to be really honest. I think the world is being run by gangsters. And if we don't take responsibility for leadership ourselves, then we're heading for extinction in all those areas: sustainability, climate change, pandemics, mass migrations, war, terrorism, mechanized ways of killing each other. It's total insanity. So the responsibility is ours at the moment, not anybody else's.
Great. Thank you for your answer.
Thanks, Danielle. There's just this notion of individual responsibility that we can't wait. Every time I've had the instinct to do something that scares me, but I know is in the service of something bigger than me, you just have to learn to be comfortable with that step across a threshold into some courage, because each of us needs to take responsibility, not waiting until we're somehow anointed or empowered externally. It comes from the inside. And when you have a vision of reaching 1 billion people with this type of awareness and consciousness, again, that can't wait. That has to be a fire that we figure out how to light in individuals. Gracie, an alum from many years ago.
Hi, Deepak. Thank you so much for making time for us today.
Sure.
My question is about this concept of cosmic citizenship and well-being, and how we reconcile that when we're, at least in the US specifically, motivated by economic growth. And there are so many other benefits that we can get from focusing on that kind of consciousness. How do we help refocus our culture to not be so hyper-focused on economic growth and think about these other forms of well-being?
So, our cultures, especially in the United States, but in much of the Western world, and actually now in much of the Eastern world also, which is guided by economic growth, is also based on the recycling of mythology, which is no longer relevant, which is that, if I can succeed economically, then I'll be happy, and my colleagues will be happy, and the country will be very successful in what it's doing, or the organization will be amazingly successful. I'm actually coming out with a book next month, I believe, or March 1st. It's called Abundance, the Inner Path to Wealth. And it was inspired by a quote from Bob Marley, one of his lyrics, where he said, "Some people are so poor, all they have is money." I'll repeat that. Some people are so poor, all they have is money. So if you look at the social science behind happiness, money is important. It's about 10 to 12 to 15% of your happiness experience. If somebody wins the lottery, they'll be ecstatic in the beginning, but after 6 months, they return to their set point for happiness, which means, are they looking at opportunities or are they looking at problems? So there's a lot of work on happiness now. Happiness is based on your attitude, number one. Number two, on your economic growth, but the economic growth is 10 to 12%. And number three, on how you participate every day in making choices. So there are two kinds of choices that we make every day. One is for personal pleasure, buying a nice new iPhone, or depending on your economic status, it could be a yacht or a plane or an automobile. Doesn't make people happy. After a while, they get bored of whatever they indulge in for personal pleasure. There's another kind of choice. It's called fulfillment. And that comes from having meaning and purpose in your life, and the ability to make other people happy, give them attention, affection, appreciation, acceptance. So given the work that we now have and the data we have on happiness, what I've been doing is going to businesses and corporations and showing them that actually if we follow the bigger principles of well-being, social well-being, business well-being, community well-being, emotional well-being, economically, that'll have much better outcome than the recycling of old competitive businesses. We have creative intelligence. You need to move away from competition to cooperation, but also to creativity. Humans have this ability to create things that never existed before. Just look what happened in the last pandemic. So we don't realize, but the research on mRNA and transcriptome is going to lead to new discoveries on not only vaccines for, say, COVID or flu, but also for cancer, for other diseases. A greater knowledge of how the biological system is influenced by epigenetics, or how we think and how we feel. The fact that new technologies have emerged in an amazing way during this pandemic. Zoom, we use these technologies now to connect with each other. We found the ways to connect with each other globally that weren't there before. And as we move into the future, we are moving from Web 1.0 to Web 2.0 to Web 3.0, immersive experiences, artificial intelligence, augmented reality. All these things are going to come together so we can use technology for divine purposes rather than for diabolical purposes.
Thank you so much for an in-depth response, and just a quick reflection as a student of forestry, learning that our ecosystems are also driven by a lot of synergy and not just competition. And so this idea of competition ruling our world is really falling away in most fields. So I love making those connections. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gracie. We have a few minutes left and would love to turn it back to you with my appreciation for everything you've already shared and an invitation to lead us through some form of mindful practice.
Okay, so wherever you are, sit quietly, be comfortable in a chair, put your feet firmly on the ground, uncross your legs, keep your hands open in your lap, and let's start with just closing our eyes and observing our breath, which was the first mindfulness, by the way, was just observing breath. And as you observe breath, know that breath is a sensation and all experience is some kind of sensation. All experience, sense perception, feelings, images, thoughts. Breath is what connects us to our spirit. As you observe the breath, you'll notice it automatically slows down. And when the Buddha observed the breath, he came to a very simple conclusion. We don't breathe, we are being breathed. It's spontaneous. It's a sensation that arises, we experience it, then it subsides. And that's true of all experience. It arises, we experience it, then it subsides. If we hold on to the breath, we suffocate. Hold on to any experience, same thing happens. Experience is always spontaneous and in the moment. So just observe the breath. Now, bring your awareness to your heart and mentally ask yourself the following question. Who am I? What am I? Am I the changing body, or am I the consciousness in which the body is a changing experience? Am I the changing mind, or am I the awareness, the consciousness in which the changing mind is an experience? Am I my personality, my ego identity, or am I the awareness in which even my personality is a changing experience? Don't try to answer the question, just ask it and let it go. Ask and receive whatever you receive, sensations, images, feelings, thoughts. What am I? Who am I? And now let's move to the next question. What do I want? What is my deepest desire? Not only for myself, but for the world. Again, don't try to answer the question, just ask. What do I want for myself and the world? Allowing any sensation, any image, any feeling, any thought to spontaneously arise or not arise. What do I want? Third question. What is my calling? What is my purpose in this moment, in the world? What is my highest calling? And what am I going to do about it? Don't try to answer it. Allow any sensations, images, feelings, thoughts to spontaneously come to you. What is my highest purpose? Fourth question, what am I grateful for? Gratitude will open the window to your soul. What am I grateful for? Allowing any sensation, any image, any feeling, any thought to come to you. And now let's move a little deeper. So mentally start to repeat your full name to yourself. I am Abby Falk. I am Grace Backman. I am Deepak Chopra. I am Sophia Lopez. Even as you repeat your name, just know that's your name. That's not who you are. So now let go of your name and just repeat the phrase I am with no name, no form attached to it. And now if you want, replace I am with the sound, the vibration, the mantra, aham, which simply means I exist, I am, aham, mentally. If your mind gets distracted, just come back to the mantra, aham. Let's do this for a full minute right now. I'll count the time. Now let go of the mantra and just rest in the stillness of your own being. Rest in awareness. Be aware of being aware. Awareness has no shape, no age, no location. Awareness is infinite and formless. And that's who we are, awareness. Just rest in awareness. Now, rest in awareness. And now please relax into your bodies. You can move, stretch, yawn, and gently open your eyes. That's a very short introduction to both mindfulness and also to transcendence and inquiry. You can now open your eyes. Abby, back to you.
And Isa too. Well, we are so grateful for your presence, your wisdom, everything you've practiced that now ripples through this community and through us, through everybody in our worlds as well, around the world. So this has been a moving, grounding, illuminating session, and I hope the first of more to come.
I hope so.
Thank you.
Abby, thanks everyone. Thank you, global citizens. Lots of love.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope everyone enjoyed this session today. I want to remind you all that we'll be sending out a survey to let us know your thoughts. I feel really calm and at peace and centered right now from this meditation. So I want to thank you again, Dr. Deepak Chopra, for all of your words and just all of the amazing food for thought that you left for us that I know that me and all of us will be thinking about for a very long time. So again, thank you so much. And I also want to thank everyone for being here. Thank you to our alumni and for our newest students. Thank you all for taking the time to come to the workshop today. And I want to invite you all again to come to the global gathering on January 28th and 29th. And with that, I hope you enjoyed our session. And thank you again, Dr. Deepak Chopra. Thank you again, Abby Falik, for having us here.